So welcome everyone. My name is John Ragosa. I'm the AVP of Broadband Deployment. We're here today to speak about for our virtual forum for local and tribal governments and not-profit organizations regarding the Broadband Challenge process. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy days to attend. Thank you, Kat. So on our agenda, we will obviously speak about Connect All, high-level overview, go over our challenge process, give a demo of the challenge portal, and leave some time for Q&A and discussion on next steps. So again, welcome to our stakeholder forum series. We've seek to engage input from a wide variety of stakeholders to ensure successful partnership and collaboration on the programs. We've had several series, federal funding opportunities for community anchor institutions, updates for counties and regional planning councils, and discussions on our affordable housing connectivity program. Today, speaking about the Broadband Challenge process. A few housekeeping items. The session is being recorded. We will be sharing the slides, and they'll email out links so you can consume it at your leisure in the future. If you have any questions, please use the Zoom Q&A function. There should be a Q&A button down at the bottom that you can click on. You see two small icons with the label Q&A. And any important links as well will be used in the meeting chat. Anything shared here as well will also be sent out via email for future consumption. We have various members of the Connect All team to help answer questions. Myself, we have Mark Tentenborn, Rose Veland. We're also joined by Jason Aloya from Ready.net, and Kat Lau, one of our consultants from HRNA Advisors. Next slide. So high level, for those that don't know, the Connect All is a state organization with a mandate to deploy transform New York's digital infrastructure and build a robust marketplace to bring affordable and reliable high-speed internet service to all New Yorkers. We have 5 signature programs to help accomplish that. The Connect All Deployment Program, otherwise known as BEAD, the Affordable Housing Connectivity Program, Digital Equity Program, Connectivity and Innovation, and our Municipal Infrastructure Program. Today's focus is going to be on the deployment program and the challenge process associated with it. Again, the 5 programs will be using federal funding authorized by the WIRED Act to effectively connect all residents and businesses to high-speed, reliable, and affordable broadband. We have a goal to complete that by 2030, as well as expanding rural cellular coverage. We have a mandate to have a robust and competitive marketplace. We have a goal to connect 100,000 households in affordable and public housing by 2030, 20,000 plus households via open access and municipal infrastructure, again by 2030, and overall create quality jobs for and underemployed New Yorkers. We have a statewide mobilization to end the digital divide. We have a statewide digital equity plan that's had a lot of engagement statewide. We have at least $50 million to implement the digital equity plan, and connectivity innovations across rural and low-income areas. Next slide, please. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Kat Lau from HRNA to go over the challenge process.
Thank you, John, and hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. My name is Kat Lau. I am a director at HRNA Advisors on the Broadband and Digital Equity team. We've been working with the Connect All office to implement the challenge process. So in this section of the presentation, I'm going to provide a bit of background on what the challenge process is, where it fits in our overall program timeline, and then get into the nuts and bolts of how to participate. And then from there, we will go into our live demo of the portal. So first, to zoom out a bit, this is part of the Connect All deployment program. That is one of the 5 signature programs that John mentioned earlier. And this is Connect All's program to address unserved and underserved locations in the state. So those are locations with no or inadequate broadband service. We have just shy of $700 million to address those locations. And the way that we're determining which locations to address is based on the FCC's National Broadband Map. So at the kickoff of our challenge process, that map currently shows about 95,000 unserved and underserved locations in the state. And those are shown on the map here on the left. There are red dots, as you can see, scattered all over the state, indicating our unserved and underserved locations. The purpose of the challenge process is to correct and update that map and that data. So we will be engaging with all kinds of different stakeholders to understand any local data or evidence that you all have to help us generate the most accurate possible data so that we are then going out and allocating funding accordingly. This process of arriving at the final list of locations for the Connect All deployment program is part of a multi-month, multi-step process. So the challenge process is really kind of the tail end of this, but just to touch briefly on some of the steps that the Connect All office has taken up until this point. Several months ago, we started off by pulling a first version of our location list based on the latest version of the FCC map. And then the Connect All office went through a data and outreach process to identify community anchor institutions, many of which you represent on this call today. These are also known as CAIs. And these are locations that may be able to be served with broadband service through the program. So I'll come back to this process slide in a second, but just to zoom in briefly on the CAIs. I won't read through this entire slide, but this is the definition that Connect All has used to identify CAIs. And the BEAD, the federal funding that comes for the Connect All deployment program is provided by the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, or NTIA. And NTIA has established as a priority, recognizing how important community anchor institutions like this are to our communities. They've established as a priority that these types of institutions should get connected with gigabit speed symmetrical broadband service. So in our Connect All deployment program, we will be prioritizing and giving preference to projects and grant applications that can demonstrate that they will connect the CAIs within the project area to high-speed broadband service. So for that reason, it's very important that we know where all the relevant CAIs are in the state. And so we have a list that I'll talk about in a second that's been posted online. And we are definitely looking for challenges through this process to that list to make sure that we have all the correct CAIs and that the information we have about their connectivity is as accurate as possible. So just going back to the overall process, after the CAI step, Connect All then did another data and outreach process to identify locations that have existing broadband deployment commitments. So these might be federal programs, state programs, regional, county, local programs, where ISPs have entered into agreements already to deploy broadband service in the near future. So if we are able to find out that that service is going to be deployed soon, then we have taken those locations off of our list for the Connect All deployment program so as not to duplicate efforts. Next, we went through a step that's called pre-challenge modifications. And we adopted some guidance from the NTIA that allows us to take locations that are served only with DSL technology and actually classify those as underserved on our list. So we went through and made those modifications as well. And that's just to reflect Connect All's priority to invest in future-proof technology that can be upgraded to higher speeds as we go forward. Next, Connect All published the results of all of these modification steps in the form of preliminary lists that are now available on the Connect All website at broadband.ny.gov. These are lists of all of the location IDs for the served, unserved, underserved, and CAI locations that Connect All has identified. So those locations are available, or those lists are available for download as CSV files, but it's also the same underlying data that feeds the map that you will see in the challenge portal when we get to the demo portion. And then next we get to the piece of the process we're at now, which is our challenge process. And during this time, government entities, nonprofit organizations, and internet service providers are going to be able to submit challenges and rebuttals along with evidence to help us correct the map and refine our list. Following the challenge and rebuttal periods, Connect All will be evaluating all of the evidence that's been submitted, making final decisions on each of the challenges and rebuttals, and that will result in a revised list of locations eligible for program funding. We will submit that list to NTIA for their review and approval. And once they approve that list, that's when we really have the final kind of to-do list for the Connect All deployment program. That's when we have the final unserved, underserved, and CAI locations that we then need to go out and connect. So just to get more into the challenge process piece of this, this is the overall timeline for our process that's going to take place over the next 3 to 4 months. You can see there's 4 different phases here, so I'll talk about each of these in turn. We are right now getting into late March, so we are currently in our public comment process, which started back in February, but is going to run until April 11th. And I'll zoom in on this in a little bit, but this is a period during which members of the general public are able to share information with us about their broadband service. We are also now at the beginning of our challenge submission window. So this started on Tuesday and now is running until April 18th. During this time, local and tribal governments and nonprofit organizations will be able to review public comments that have been submitted in the portal and potentially submit those as formal challenges. Additionally, those entities and ISPs will be able to submit their own challenges in the portal. And we'll walk through how exactly you go about doing that in just a second. Connect All will be reviewing those challenges as they come in. And in late April, we plan to open up the rebuttal period. So during this period, ISPs who have received a challenge on their service will have an opportunity to rebut those challenges. And then any entity who's registered in the portal will have an opportunity to rebut what we call open challenges. And those are challenges that are not against any one specific entity. Following the challenges and rebuttals getting submitted, we will enter the final adjudication phase. And like I was saying before, this is when Connect All will review all of the evidence that's been submitted and make final decisions, preparing those revised lists for submission to NTIA. So I will zoom in now just on those first 2 steps of that timeline. So starting with the public comment phase. Again, this is open right now until April 11th. And at our challenge portal website, which is register.broadband.ny.gov, that link is in the chat for you as well. Members of the general public can come in and tell us anything they want to tell us, basically, about their broadband service. So there are several different categories of comment that you can submit, and those comments will be visible on the back end of the portal to government and nonprofit challengers. We definitely want to encourage as much participation as possible in the public comment process. And so definitely encourage you to spread the word about this to your stakeholders, your constituents, your members. And we have created an outreach toolkit that is on Connect All's website as well that has several materials you can use to help spread the word. And on the right here, you can just see a screenshot of what the public comment interface looks like. It's very similar to what you'll see in a second for the challenge submission, but here you can just see the version of the locations map for New York and the workflow to submit or to select a location. And then, of course, we are now in the formal challenge process. So again, this opened up on Tuesday and is going to be live until April 18th. The link still in the chat, register.broadband.ny.gov. That is our challenge portal. If you have not already registered to participate in the challenge process, we highly encourage you to do that. And the next slide will get into what you need in order to register. But in general, units of local and tribal government, nonprofit organizations, and internet service providers are all eligible to participate in this process. If you are not one of those entities or you don't represent one of those organizations, you still can participate in our public comment process. So you can go to that same website and just go through the public comment flow. And we would definitely encourage you to participate that way if you're not able to go through the formal challenge process. And then, of course, this webinar is intended to be a helpful how-to on how to participate, but we also have more detailed materials posted online. So we are referring folks to our BEAD Initial Proposal, Volume 1, as well as our Challenge Process User Guide. Both of these documents are available on the portal website, as well as on ConnectAll's website, broadband.ny.gov. And these documents have much more detail about each of the different acceptable challenge types, the different types of evidence that are acceptable for each of them. And in the case of the user guide, it has a step-by-step instructions on how to actually upload the relevant files and what to click and what fields are required and things like that. So as you go through this process, if you have questions, certainly we will be sharing lots of contact information. But these resources, the user guide and initial proposal, are also going to be very helpful to you. So highly recommend checking those out. Okay, so to register in the portal, if you have not done this already, it is super easy. It should only take a couple minutes, but you will need to register in order to be able to view public comments, submit challenges, and submit rebuttals. So in order to register, you'll go to that same website, register.broadband.ny.gov. There's a very simple intake form where you will need to provide your organization's name and website, your own name, email, and phone number, the EIN and physical address for your organization, and in the case of nonprofits, proof of your registration with the Secretary of State. In the case of tribal governments, we will ask for the tribe name as it's listed in the by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And then there's an additional optional field to upload any other documentation you might have to verify your organization's identity. We do have to make sure that everyone participating in the challenge process falls into one of those eligible categories of government, nonprofit, or ISP. And so we actually will be reviewing all of the information you submit in order to verify that you are an eligible entity. So make sure to just give us as much information as you can to make that review as quick and easy as possible. Once you submit your registration, it can take a day or two to get approved, but then you should have access to the portal, no problem. And one additional note, we do recommend that if you have multiple people in your organization who will be participating in the challenge process, we recommend that the primary point of contact be the person who registers first. Once that person gets approved, they will be able to go in and invite additional teammates from the organization to join so that you all are working on the same profile. And that is going to be the most streamlined way to get everyone from your organization in. Additionally, you may wish to request a CostQuest license to support your participation in the challenge process. The challenge process is based on the FCC's National Broadband Map. Unfortunately, we are not able to share all of the raw underlying data from that map with external parties due to licensing restrictions. So anyone who wants to work with that map fabric can apply for a free license from CostQuest. There's no cost for this. It is also not required to participate in this process or to file challenges. But if you are planning to submit bulk challenges, like dozens or hundreds of locations, or you want to do your own GIS analysis to look at the different location points and put together your challenge that way, then this might help you. In that case, I would point everyone to the NTIA website that's listed at the bottom of the slide here, and Rose just put that link in the chat as well. That has more information about the different license tiers, and that has the links you can click directly to submit those requests. And we have heard that these licenses can take up to a couple weeks to approve. So if this is something you want to take advantage of, definitely get that request in ASAP. Unfortunately, it's an independent process that ConnectAll can't expedite for you. So please do submit those requests now if you want to use a license ahead of the challenge submission deadline on April 18th. And additionally, for local and tribal governments and nonprofits, we have been working with regional planning boards and councils across the state who are available to provide additional support and technical assistance for you. So this slide just has the websites for all of the different regional planning entities we've been engaging with, as well as the counties that they cover. If you are not already in contact with your relevant regional organization, you need help getting in touch, or if your county is not listed here, then definitely feel free to reach out to Connect All and we can help facilitate introductions. And again, these slides will be sent out, so no need to rush to screenshot this or anything. Next, getting into the actual challenges. So this slide shows a table of all the different challenge types that we will be accepting through this process. I won't read through all of them, but I'll just mention that these fall roughly into 3 big buckets. So the first several challenge types here, availability through business service only. All of these are essentially you telling us that the information we have in the current map is not correct, and providing information, updating some detail of the service that's listed. The second bucket here, enforceable commitments and planned service, those are where there is a plan already in place to deploy broadband to certain locations, and therefore we should be removing it from our program so as not to duplicate efforts. And then the last category, which is what we're going to demo for you actually, is all challenges to do with CAIs. So all of the CAIs that Connect All has identified are shown on the challenge portal map. They are also available in that CSV file that I mentioned is on our website. And you can help us ensure that funding is being allocated most efficiently for those locations by letting us know if there's an entity that is a CAI but hasn't been included on our list, or vice versa, or if the information that we have about the current service that's available to those CAI locations is not accurate. And then just to touch briefly on a couple of special case challenges, Connect All will be adjudicating area and multiple dwelling unit, or MDU, challenges. These are in scenarios where there are multiple challenges submitted for one provider in a small area. So in the case of an area challenge, this is triggered when 6 or more locations are lodged for a single provider within a single census block group. And essentially that ends up triggering a challenge for the whole census block group. So during the rebuttal phase, Connect All will request evidence from the internet service provider to demonstrate that they serve all the locations in that area, or a portion of that area if applicable. An MDU challenge is essentially the same concept, just on the smaller scale of a building. So in this case, it's triggered when at least 3 residential units or 10% of the total units within the building are challenged, whichever of those is larger. And again, it would similarly require a rebuttal from the ISP demonstrating that they do serve all of the units in that building. For more information on these can be a little bit more technical and more confusing. I would refer folks again to our initial proposal, volume 1, and the challenge process user guide. Again, both are available through the challenge portal website or broadband.ny.gov. Okay, so with that, I will pass it over to Jason from ready.net, who's going to walk us through the challenge portal. He will explain kind of how to get oriented when you first log in, but we're also going to show how to submit a new challenge, how to respond to a request for revisions from Connect All if needed, and then we will talk briefly about what happens next after you've submitted your challenge. Thanks, Jason.
You will see a Create Challenge button down there in the bottom right-hand side. And then it's just a simple matter of clicking Create Challenge, and you can advance to the next screen. And that action will simply take that information and convert it to a challenge submitted by your organization. And then from this point on, it's just a challenge like any other that you would have submitted. Okay, great. So we spoke a little bit about the phases. We really demoed step 1, which is all about challenge submissions. The status values that you may see during this phase is the challenged status. That just means that you have submitted the challenge. If a revision has been requested, you'll see that indicator on your dashboard. And then once you have submitted your challenges, your revisions, the status would update to changes submitted. This process, as Kat had mentioned, will continue through April 18th. Then we will move on to a phase that really is what we call initial review. It's just a period of time where ConnectAll will continue to evaluate all of the challenges that have come in and ensure that they have at least the minimum required set of information and evidence to proceed. The third phase is known as the rebuttal period, and that is where any provider who may have been challenged has an opportunity to rebut and provide counter evidence in their defense. That will proceed until the late May time period, and then essentially for all intents and purposes, the challenge process is closed to outside contributors, and ConnectAll spends a period of time reviewing all of that challenge and rebuttal data and making final determinations on whether or not those challenges will be sustained or rejected before reporting to NTIA.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, so a few recommendations to make your participation in this process as smooth as possible. The first is to register early. If you have not already registered, go ahead and submit that application now. It should be very quick to do, and we should be able to approve your registration within just a day or two. I saw one question come through the Q&A about checking the status of your registration. If you registered a little bit ago and you haven't gotten the approval, I believe we are caught up on our registrations as of today. So go ahead and check your spam folder or your email for an email from ConnectAll office. If you don't see that, feel free to reach out. We can resend invites if needed. Similarly, if you are going to be requesting a CostQuest license, do so as soon as possible. This one would be the more time-sensitive one, since it is a longer process than just registering for the portal. So again, not required, but may be helpful if you plan to submit bulk challenges. And again, there's no cost associated with the license, but we have heard that that can take up to a couple of weeks. So get those requests in ASAP if you do plan to take advantage of that option. Thirdly, reach out if you need help. As Jason mentioned, we're going to be having another webinar in April prior to the opening of the rebuttal process. We are also going to be having weekly office hours throughout this whole period. And even outside of those sessions, you should definitely feel free to email the team at challenge@esd.ny.gov. Or if you're having technical issues specifically with the portal, then you can email nyhelpdesk@ready.net. We will be happy to hear from you and help troubleshoot any issues that you're encountering. And then lastly, and this is the most important of the recommendations, submit your challenges as early as you can. Early submission means that when the ConnectAll team goes through and reviews your challenge, if we identify any issues, anything missing, anything we need to follow up with you on for revision, we will have as much time as possible to do that. We are obviously working on a very tight timeline. We know that April 18th is not that far away. And the earlier you can submit your challenges, the better kind of all around. Not only will it help us give you more opportunity to revise your submission if you need to, but it also just helps keep the entire challenge process on track. Since again, we're working within pretty strict timelines from NTIA to get the whole thing done. So with that, I think we have probably a little over 10 minutes for Q&A and discussion. I know we've had a lot of questions coming through the Q&A feature, so thank you for those. I'm going to be, we've answered several of them within the Q&A box, but I'm going to read out some of those aloud as well for anyone who's not been watching those in real time. And then we have a couple new open ones as well. So I will start with just one that I flagged to answer live. So a question about CAIs. If there's a location we might consider a CAI, but it doesn't fall within the definition listed by the state, then can we still submit a challenge for it? For example, parks. So I would say for this, you are certainly welcome to submit a challenge with any justification or documentation that you want to provide. We do have a category in our definition that is community support organizations that facilitate broadband access. So if you can make a strong case for a new CAI that facilitates access to broadband for vulnerable communities, we can review that and make a judgment call. Unfortunately, we are somewhat limited in the organizations we can accept as CAIs because the definition that we have has been negotiated back and forth with NTIA. All of the deviations and customizations that the state did on top of NTIA's default definitions, those all had to be discussed and approved. And so now that the definition we're working with has been approved, we don't have a ton of leeway, but I would still say if you feel like you have a strong case to make about a community support organization that is facilitating broadband access, then go ahead and submit a challenge and we will be happy to review any documentation you provide. Okay. So I'm just going to go quickly through a few of the questions we've answered via text just to catch anyone up who hasn't been monitoring the Q&A. So first question, how can we obtain GIS shapefiles for our jurisdiction? We have published lists of FCC location IDs for unserved, underserved, served, and CAI locations at our website, broadband.ny.gov. If you have a CostQuest license and have access to the FCC fabric, then you can join those location IDs with that fabric and create a layer using GIS software. But also you can just work with those CSV files of location numbers if you need. And again, that is all the same data that is feeding the map within the challenge portal. So you can also look at it through the map. How can we connect with agencies that are receiving funds? We'd like to potentially partner for some training opportunities or employment opportunities. I would recommend for something like this, reaching out to ConnectAll at esd.ny.gov. We may be able to help facilitate some introductions, but also moving forward in the future, all of the entities receiving grant funding from ConnectAll will be made public. Let's see. Mention one question about cost for challenges. Unfortunately, cost is not a basis for a challenge based on the NTIA process. We are focusing through this process on whether service is available and whether the terms under which it is available are match the levels that are described in the FCC's map. That said, ConnectAll is always interested in hearing about barriers to access, including cost. So you certainly can submit public comments on some of those concerns or just reach out to ConnectAll directly. Let's see what else we have. Okay, let's go to some of the open comments here. So okay, so from David Fuller, let's answer this one. The website notes that if your location is already eligible for new federal broadband grants, it will not be selectable and the map cannot be commented on in regards to public comment. Is this the same for the challenge portal, as I've noticed some locations not being selectable there? Jason, do you want to address that one? Just the difference between what's selectable through the public comment map versus the formal challenge portal process?
Yes. Thank you for repeating the question. So the public comment map is really intended to capture only those challenges that a community member would have visibility into. So those are the types of challenges that relate to the level of service they receive. And they include availability, speed challenges, whether or not there's a data cap on their available plans, that business services are the only available broadband services in their area. So that is one key difference. in the public comment application in comparison to the full challenge portal. And the other is really the map is focused on just the dimensions related to the service level of those locations. So they do not have all of the abilities to filter by funding programs or whether or not it's a community anchor institution or not. So it's a streamlined version of the challenge process that's targeted at the types of challenges that are likely to be viable from a resident.
Great, thank you, Jason. And I think kind of a similar question maybe from Jenny Lee in the Q&A as well. How do individuals submit comments on missing locations in un or underserved areas? You can't comment on missing locations if they're in unserved areas. I think this is the same answer, but anything you want to add specifically to this question?
So with the challenge process is specifically designed to correct the locations that the FCC already recognizes as a broadband serviceable location. And so that is this process is not designed to point out locations that are completely missing from the map. However, there is a separate process that is called the FCC's location challenge process, and that is somewhat separate than the challenge process that we're talking about here. But for those cases, I recommend making contact with Connect All and finding out how to submit locations that are not found on the map, but should be.
Great, thank you, Jason.
If you don't mind, I'll just quickly jump in here, Kat and Jason.
Mm-hmm.
So on the subject of kind of whether the correct set of locations is shown on the map, we are carrying out an exercise looking at the opposite case for where there's a location shown on the map according to FCC's data, but it might not really be a serviceable location. For example, some points on the map, there's just no structure there at all. In some cases, it kind of might be sort of a storage shed, which there's no demand for internet at. So if you do come across any of those and you'd like to help us out, there's a Excel template available on the Connect All website challenge page that Rose shared a link to earlier. So if you do come across any of that sort of location, then it'd be great if you could fill in the sheet and share it with us. And feel free to reach out if you've got any questions around that. There's an email address there if you want to follow up. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And one question just came in through the Q&A, which I think that directly answers. So can areas be excluded for practical reasons, such as protected forest, no BSLs in the area? In general, I think anything like that, if there's a location that is recognized by the FCC that for practical reasons you believe does not need broadband service, you can submit it through the process that Mark just mentioned. So, and I'll just briefly, let me show where that lives on our website. For anyone who does want to share that information. So this is at broadband.ny.gov. We have this link in the top navigation here for New York State Challenge. And this page has everything that you would ever want to know about the challenge process, but it has the link directly to the portal, links to register for the webinar, upcoming webinars and office hours. And then this is what Mark was just referencing. There's a link here to this form to report information about locations that you think may not actually be serviceable locations. Again, this is not directly what the BEAD challenge process is designed to address, but we recognize that that may impact how the program rolls out. And so we do want to get that information if you have it. So I'm just gonna put the link, the direct link to this page in the answer to that question. Okay, and I'm also I'm realizing I had a couple of questions coming to me through DMs in the chat. So I want to just address a couple of those. So one, Jason, I would love if you could take this one. What is the best way to challenge a CAI that has not been assigned a location ID?
The best way, okay, so again, there is a template that is a spreadsheet for, well, let me ask a qualifying question. Is the question how to challenge a CAI that does not even have a point on the map? If that is the case, if the CAI that you want to challenge is nowhere to be found on the map, we have to take that spreadsheet route that Mark had mentioned, and there's a resource on the Connect All website for that. In the event of a location that does have a point on the map, but is not designated as a community anchor institution, the portal does have a challenge type for that case, which is a CAI challenge.
Thank you, Jason. And another that I had in my chat here, asking about CAIs, volunteer fire departments. And actually, I think I maybe just answered this in text as well, but to close the loop. Same answer as before for parks. Anything that you have that's not currently part of Connect All's CAI definition, you are certainly welcome to submit information and your justification for why you think it should be included on the list. Again, we will be somewhat constrained based on what has been approved by NTIA, but Connect All will review any information that you submit on that. Okay. All right. And then a question about the CostQuest access and registration website link for nonprofits. That is... Rose can bump that again in the chat, but that's a part of NTIA's website, and there's more information there on the different licensing tiers. I have some questions in my DMs about that process and what is required to request the license. This is unfortunately like a totally independent process from Connect All, and we don't have any control over it. So we can look into that. If anyone's having issues requesting the license, feel free to reach out to us at challenge@esd.ny.gov. We'll try to help troubleshoot if we can. But if there are specific requirements from CostQuest that are causing trouble, we may not have much ability to get around those, unfortunately, since we have no control over that process. But we will try to help troubleshoot. So feel free to reach out. Okay, and we're coming up on the hour here. So let me just address one last question that I just saw come in. Where can someone see the current Connect All app of CAI? I think maybe that means like the list of CAIs. So that is posted now on this on the site. So it's actually the same page that I was just showing. Again, if you go to broadband.ny.gov, click NYS challenge at the top, you will see a lot of information, but specifically under resources here, this is where the different lists that we're starting with in the challenge process. This is where those different lists are available for download. So you can find it there and review the list. Okay, so going back to our slides here to just wrap this up before the hour and get into some next steps. Again, if you have not yet registered for the challenge portal, you can do so at register.broadband.ny.gov. You can also use this QR code here on the slide. While our public comment process remains open until April 11th, we would love for you to encourage your members, your constituents, your stakeholders, your contacts to participate. And we have an outreach toolkit for that available on our website. Additionally, we invite you to join the future sessions we'll be having for support on the challenge process. A webinar like this one focused on the rebuttal process in April, and then weekly office hours throughout this entire challenge process. Information about that will come to you via email. It's also listed on broadband.ny.gov, and you can already register for those office hours sessions if you already know you want to attend. And then lastly, as always, reach out to Connect All with any questions or concerns. challenge@esd.ny.gov is the dedicated email address for this whole process. And with that, we will close out. Thank you so much to everyone for your time this afternoon. Thank you to my colleagues at Connect All and Ready for your support through this presentation. Again, this recording and the slides will be emailed out to you and posted on the Connect All website. So hopefully this can remain a helpful resource for you. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you in our future sessions. Thank you everyone for your interest in the challenge process, and thank you in advance for your help with getting us to the most accurate list possible for this program. Thank you so much. And with that, I will end the screen share and wish everyone a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Thank you.